Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. As you can see, my background looks a little weird. I have a video going up that may or may not be out yet where I scoured my bookshelves and figured out how many books I have read versus how many books I have not read. And I just did that this morning before filming like the other videos that I needed to film, just because I wanted the books to all be on my shelves before I started pulling them. But I'm cleaning it up afterwards, so right now my shelves still look weird, but I promise all the books are still there. They're just turned around, but it's fine. So today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up. Yes, it's late. Yes, I've been a very slacking booktuber, but I'm trying to get back into it just because life has just been very busy recently. And I just haven't really had time to film, and even when I have filmed, I haven't had a ton of time to edit. So trying to get back on track, really doing my best here, but that's what we're going to talk about, is all of the books that I read in the month of September. It was a pretty good reading month. I did read 10 things, but a couple of them were like novellas or short stories, so I've counted them all as separate things, but in terms of length, like the reason that I was able to read 10 things is just because like a couple of them were really short. However, a very good reading month in terms of quality. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in order of like the order that I read things, because it makes the most sense in terms of like I've read a few things from a series, and just because there are so many things, I think this organization just makes the most sense to me. So what that does mean is that we are starting on a high note, because the first thing I read in September was The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. And this is, I gave it 5 stars. This is a fascinating and beautiful book, and I don't even really know how to describe properly what it's doing, because it's quite the experience when you read it. And the reason that it's so interestingly crafted is because you kind of have like a story within a story within a story being told. Like you have a main like narrative plot line that's being told, but that plot line is kind of being told to you, but then it's also being played out on a stage in like a world of dreams where another character from another time is being brought there in a dream to watch it play out, and they are from sort of like a further in the future present day, and you learn about their lives, and the plot line that's happening in here is kind of also being told to that character through stories like from their ancestors and stuff like that have been passed down as sort of like myths and legends. So it's a very interesting combination, and like, I don't even really know how to go into the plot, but I'll just kind of give the basics, which is that at the beginning of this book, you have a dynasty and an empire, and the emperor has 3 sons that have been sired upon this moon goddess, and the moon goddess is the basis of the throne's power. So each of the 3 sons, they are known as the 3 terrors, have a gift, and the reason that they each have a gift is because they are half, like they are the sons of the emperor and the moon goddess. They are like half demigods. I don't know exactly how that works. It's not fully explained in here, but one of the like 3 terrors sons ends up being involved in a plot that frees the moon goddess and tries to essentially take down the emperor and the throne by virtue of freeing the moon goddess, because she was their basis of power, and they are pursued. And it is just a very like, it kind of reads like a fairy tale, but it also reads like a myth. And I really enjoyed the quality of the writing and the feeling that it gave, and I feel like it's more of a vibe than anything. Like even trying to describe it right now, I know I'm not doing it justice, because it's a book that just has to be experienced, and I don't think it can just really be explained in so few words, because it all just kind of like it comes together the way that Simon Jimenez has done it. It's extremely impressive. And so yeah, I gave it 5 stars. It was one of the most unique things that I've ever read. Never read anything else like it. And it does really make me want to pick up his other book, The Vanished Birds. Now, there are a few things here that can be talked about together because the next 3 things, well, there was another book in there, but regardless, 3 of the next 4 things that I read were from the same series. So the first of those was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, which I believe I also gave 5 stars, and if not that, then very close to 5 stars. And then in the back of this book, there's actually included a novella called The Lord Sorcier, which is, I think it's like 0.5 or 1.5 in this series. And I gave that novella 3.75 stars. And then we have 10,000 Stitches, which is the second book in this series, which I gave 4.5 stars. So the first one I read, of course, is Half a Soul because it's the first one in the series. And even though these Regency fairy tales are connected, they're not directly connected, although reading this one first definitely gives you some knowledge that you take into the next one, and then certain things like make sense because of the information that you know, even though it's not a direct sequel. But Half a Soul is about our main character, Dora, who, when she was a child, she actually had half of her soul stolen by a fae and was essentially rescued before her full soul could be taken, but the fae still successfully took part of her soul. And so the effect that this has on her is sort of like a dulling of her emotions. She can feel them, but they seem more distant to her. They don't seem as immediate. She doesn't really understand why people, like other people, react so emotionally to things in the moment, like if they're reacting to something traumatic or upsetting, because to her, it's like she can still feel those emotions, but they're sort of like distant and like a presence in the back of her head where they're just not as immediate and important right now. And so this causes her a lot of trouble because she doesn't quite know how to act completely naturally in social situations, or at least not exactly the way people expect her to act and react. And so she has dealt with this her whole life, but she ends up coming to London with her cousin because they are basically trying to get her cousin married and like show her for the season in like balls and parties and whatever have you. And she gets to be tagged along, even though her family doesn't really, like her aunt and everything, they don't really expect her to find anyone just because she's being regarded as so odd for her entire life. But she ends up meeting the Lord Sorcier, which is the title that has been given to, I forget what they actually call him, like a magician or a wizard. I don't really remember, but he's given this title after like what he did in is it the Battle of Waterloo? I don't really remember. But in basically services rendered in war, he is given this position and they meet each other and he is kind of like rude and off-putting, but she is very like frank and sort of just says what she thinks because she's really not worried about like what people think of her socially. And so they just form this very entertaining like duo in terms of conversation and where their relationship goes, like first as a friendship and then as something more. But I really, really loved this. So this was the best of them. And then the novella essentially goes through what they went through at the end of the war and what happened to like Albert, who is one of the characters, and the Lord Sorcier, because they were serving in the war together. And it was a good novella, but it just didn't have all that much to it, I guess. Like, I enjoyed it, but the reason it was a 3.75 is just because it didn't seem to me that it had as much depth or time to get to like soak in what was happening. So then we have the next book in the series, 10,000 Stitches, which has a similar premise because it deals with Fae and it deals with their magic. But this time we are following a character called Euphemia Reeves, I think. And yeah, so that's her full name, but she goes by Effie, and she works in a household where she ends up falling in love with the son of the family. And of course, she, as like a maid, has no standing to be marrying like a gentleman. And essentially, like the rest of the family doesn't even see her, even though this man is polite to her. And what she ends up doing is making a deal with a fae that he will help her try to get married to this man. They strike a deal where I think she has to do embroidery for him. She has to do 10,000 stitches in order to like fulfill her end of the bargain with the fae. And it's that type of thing where like throughout the book she's trying to achieve this goal and the fae is trying to help her, but she's not 100% sure if she can trust him. And then it turns out that the man she's in love with might not be quite who she thinks he is, or who she originally thought he was. And this was a very sweet story as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was 4.5 stars just because I did love it, and for a lot of the same reasons as Half a Soul, but I didn't love it as much as Half a Soul, so it has to have like a slightly lower rating to reflect that. The next thing that I read, and one that I really won't spend a lot of time on, is 13 at Dinner by Agatha Christie. This is a little old battered copy that I got secondhand, and I gave this 4 stars, and this is a Hercule Poirot mystery, and I just like to read one of these every once in a while. I really enjoy Agatha Christie. I really enjoy how she does the detective mystery with Poirot, and I'm really a fan of that format, so every so often I will pick up one of these because Agatha Christie has so many books, and I got through this in like 2 days, I think, and it was just a really enjoyable time. I always enjoy how the mystery unravels and watching that happen. Then next up we have a nonfiction which I was very excited to read after buying it, and that is The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs by Steve Brusatte. And this is written by a paleontologist, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I think that my main pros and cons, I guess you could say, or really only one con, because I did really enjoy it, is that you can tell this is extremely well researched and that he is very, very knowledgeable, and the sort of like narrative that he creates about how dinosaurs kind of came on the scene and then how they developed and when they were at their peak, all of it was really interesting. I especially enjoyed the chapters that focused on a particular thing, like the chapter on a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I really loved when he got into the nitty-gritty about the dinosaurs themselves, and all of that I thought was so interesting, and I really enjoyed reading it. And the one con that I have, and the one thing that kind of knocked a star off, I almost feel like it sounds mean to say this, but sometimes I think that he got a little bit too into the nitty-gritty of like personal stories and people that he knows in paleontology. And it's not that I have a problem with him including those things, but some of the stories were a little long, a little meandering, a little slow. Like, some of them were interesting, but some of them were just a little bit more boring, to be quite frank. And I think that if he kept them a little bit tighter, like a little bit more directly related to the dinosaurs and how he was creating the narrative, I think it would have worked better. Obviously, 4 stars, I still thought this was really good, but there were just those times when it felt slow. And if I remember correctly, it was around the maybe 40% mark where I was starting to feel really fatigued reading this. But after that, we started to get into some of those chapters that were like about specific dinosaurs and about what was really happening at the time in the past and like the research surrounding that. And then I was super into it again, and it was really easy to read, like a lot easier to read the end of the book, I think. And so that was really my only complaint. But yeah, this is really good, and I am looking forward to reading his Rise and Reign of the Mammals as well. I hope that it doesn't suffer from the same thing, like that I feel that way about it, but we will just have to wait and see, because if it has the same level of interest in terms of like the research and everything, then I'm still gonna really enjoy that as well. Okay, next up we have something I don't have a physical copy of because it was an online short story, and that is The Passing of the Dragon by Ken Liu. And this is about 45 pages of a short story, and I gave it 4.25 stars. I thought that it was really lovely. I really enjoy Ken Liu's writing, and it was sort of like, it was emotionally resonant with me. I really enjoyed it. The Passing of the Dragon is a story about an artist who is sort of searching to be understood, essentially, and she tries to capture things, and she just feels like she can't really capture in her art what she wants to, in terms of like how she sees other people react to her art, or the fact that she can't really seem to paint something that captures people, essentially. And it's sort of a journey about that, where she has an experience and then she tries to paint it, and she doesn't really understand why other people can't see what she sees. And the story kind of just progresses from there. So like, I don't, like, of course it's fairly short, so I don't want to say too much more about where it goes, but that is sort of the basic premise. And I liked the commentary in that, and I liked how Ken Liu approached it with such an emotionally sensitive side of it as well. And I thought that it was really, really well written. So yeah, gave that 4.25 stars. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Next up, another book that I don't have a physical copy of because I listened to it on audiobook from my library, and that is The X-Hex by Erin Sterling. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this one as much as the books that I've talked about thus far. I gave this one 2.5 stars. It just didn't do it for me. Unfortunately, the audiobook had one narrator for the male and the female protagonists, which isn't a problem in itself, except for the fact that the male protagonist is Welsh, and the narrator was not. And I just thought that was a bold choice for, I think it's Macmillan that does this book, and for a pretty big audiobook producer, I just thought that was quite the choice, because like, you could tell throughout the audiobook, like, it's not that the narrator was doing a bad job, because she wasn't, but you could tell that she was like 10 times more comfortable in the female perspective, because she is American, like the character, and she was 10 times more comfortable voicing the female perspective than she was trying to put like a Welsh flavor on the male perspective. Like, she wasn't trying to do like a Welsh accent, to her credit, because I don't think that that's something you can just do unless you're skilled at accents. But it was a very weird experience, and I didn't like it. Like, I didn't like listening to his parts. And just overall, like, I do think that that aspect of the audiobook did really affect my experience. But even just overall, like, the book just was a little lackluster for me, I think. Like, it wasn't bad, but it also just wasn't really anything special. Like, it was cute, but I wasn't feeling connected to it. And then another problem that I had was, you're sort of like presented with this plot where the male main character and the female main character, they spent a summer together when they were around like 19, and he had to go back to Wales, and like, he kind of broke her heart, like not completely intentionally, but she was very angry with him at the time, like when she was heartbroken, and she and her cousin, like they kind of cursed him as a joke, but then it turned out to be actually like cursing him, like, which is not what they intended to do. But when he comes back later as like a 28-year-old man, the curse comes into effect, because it essentially just only impacts the town where she lives, and he hasn't been back there since. And so this is kind of the premise that we're led with. And I'm totally on board for like this cute ridiculousness where she has accidentally hexed him, and he comes back and like bad things are happening to him, and then like they figure out why, and then like the romance develops from here. But here's the thing. The problem I had with it is that they identify the problem pretty early on near the start of the book, and in the process of identifying what is wrong, they screw up the magic for the entire town, and people are actually in danger. And then they spend the middle of the book like developing the romance and essentially like having sex, and like I don't have a problem with that in my romance books. The thing that I did have a problem with was they identified the problem that they needed to fix, and then they proceeded to ignore it for like I don't know how many real life pages it would be because I was reading the audiobook, but let's just say they ignore it for like 200 more pages, and then they spend the final 75 pages like solving the problem. And I'm like, you couldn't have balanced this. Like, you couldn't have balanced this throughout the book. You couldn't have balanced the romance with their problem solving. Anyway, I just really, I'm sorry. I didn't like it. And that's all I'll say, because I don't need to keep going on about why I didn't like it. I don't think the book deserves that, but yeah, not for me. Okay, next up, another one that I'm really not going to say too much about just because I have a dedicated video review for this, is The Counselor by E.J. Beaton. And so this was part of my Reading Booktuber's Favorite Books series, and this was the recommendation from Johan from Library of a Viking. So like I said, I do have a video about this that I will have linked in the description, but I really enjoyed this book. This was a huge win for me in terms of Johan saying that it was a hidden gem, and then me very much agreeing with him that this book deserves more attention and more people reading it, basically. So this book essentially has the premise that the queen passes away of this kingdom, and there is a scholar who is our main character, Lysand, who is given the position of counselor in this particular like eventuality. Like the queen passes away and the queen has named Lysand as the counselor. And the purpose of the counselor and like the responsibility of this position is to essentially choose the new ruler, like the new monarch. So there are multiple city-states that have sent their leaders to essentially have diplomatic relations and try to convince the counselor that they should be chosen as the new monarch. But while this is all happening, you have this other aspect of the story where there is a magic system as part of this world building, and the magic users are known as elementals. And there is a past war that happened between the White Queen, the leader of the elementals, and this sort of like the rest of the human race who are united under this queen that has just passed away. So like, I think 20 years ago, let's say, there was a war and they sort of defeated the White Queen. And then like the queen that just died has been ruling in that time of semi-peace ever since then. But it's quite possible that the reason that the queen is dead now is because of elementals, and because the White Queen has been biding her time and planning, because elementals are extremely and violently oppressed in this society. They are viewed as dangerous, they are outcasts, it is extremely dangerous to be revealed to be one, they are executed, they are jailed. So they have rallied under the White Queen, and in the past they have fought back, but now they've been like beaten down so much that like common knowledge said that they weren't a danger anymore, but they might still be. Like they might have killed the queen. So you can kind of understand why, because the queen was like beating them down into submission, and you can understand why they would want to rebel against that. But it is a bit more complex than that. You have different factions that have different loyalties. Like it's not completely black and white in that sense. And you have a really interesting like Game of Thrones-esque political situation here where multiple rulers are trying to vie for power, but also trying to figure out a way if they need to work together against something like this that is a danger to all of their cities. that was a little bit of a rambly pitch for this when I said I wasn't going to talk about it a lot. But I think I will just leave it at that because I loved it. So if you think that sounds interesting, this is a fantasy book that I would definitely recommend. And it can be read as a standalone, in my opinion, even though it's supposed to be the start of a series. There's no news on the sequel, and in my opinion, it can just be read by itself. Okay, the final book that I finished in the month of September is also one that I don't have a physical copy of because this was an electronic ARC from NetGalley. So thank you to Orbit and NetGalley for allowing me to have that ARC, and that is The Hexologist by Josiah Bancroft, which is the beginning of his new series of the same name, The Hexologist. So essentially this is the story of a husband and wife duo, and they call themselves the Hexologists because they sort of use like magic and detective work in order to help people out and solve cases and etc. So that's kind of like their concept, and then they, like, obviously throughout these books are going to be solving cases, and that is the storyline that we are going to be following with them. So I gave this book 3.25 stars. I liked it, like it was fun, and I did enjoy my time reading it, and I did really, like, I did enjoy Warren and Iz, and their marriage was cute. Like, I did enjoy the relationship between them. That might be what I enjoyed the most about the book, but overall, like, I just didn't find myself that connected to it. Like, it was a very casual feeling, and even now, when it's been like less than a month since I finished this book, any strong feeling that I had has kind of just drifted away. Like, looking back on it, I can remember that I felt casually positive about it, and that's kind of why it got the rating that it did, because there really wasn't anything that I strongly disliked about it, but then there wasn't anything making me feel that strongly about it in a positive way either. So I guess that's kind of a wishy-washy way to end the video, but that is the final thing that I read in the month of September, and I kind of wish that I had more positive things to say about it, but it's just kind of, it is what it is. I might pick up the next book in that series when it comes out, but I kind of think it's unlikely unless people feel really, really strongly about it and say that it's like amazing. Because yeah, with this one, I just kind of liked it, and then like, it's probably kind of forgettable, and that's unfortunate, but it happens. So that is it for the 10 things that I read in the month of September. Quite a few for me, but then again, like I said, there's like the short story, the novella, things that are very easy to get through that like pad the numbers just a little bit. However, on the whole, I think it was a very positive reading month. Obviously, there were a couple things that I didn't love as much, but I think that it's about as good of a month as I could ask for in terms of ratings and things that I really, really enjoyed. Maybe started a little bit stronger than it ended, but that's okay. So that is it for this video. Please tell me what you think. I hope you liked it. Do like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. As always, I'll have my Discord with Ben and my socials linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.